it is our goal to supply the local market in South Africa. We want Iceander to be available. We want patients to be able to get it. I said that our focus is on being a cultivator. Our focus is also making sure that patients are able to receive our product. So if a patient wants our product, if they think it will help them, then it's our goal to make sure that they can get it. So wherever possible, we'll try to get the product to them.
Lekka Dagga. South Africa is quickly making a name for itself in the ever-changing cannabis landscape, and companies like MedCan are looking to get a foothold on the global medical scene. We speak to co-founder Micael Zollman to find out more.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Lobsterpot podcast. I'm Dave Barton, co-founder of Thermidor and co-host of the Lobsterpot. Here is my co-founder and co-host, Jamie Bonthron. Jamie, it's November already. How are you finding it so far? We're 2 days in.
Do you know what I was going to lead with? I was going to lead with the cliche thing of I don't know where the time's gone, but I really don't. I have genuinely no idea why it's November.
I know. I know. It's kind of good because there's lots happening in November. Most of all, for us, MJ BizCon, which is going to be cool. And we also have a guest today who I'm not sure. Are you going to be there? Are you going to be at MJ BizCon?
I wasn't planning on being at MJ BizCon. I am going to be at the cannabis, the medical patients cannabis awareness week this week on Friday, but not MJ BizCon.
Excellent. And we have our guest who's already introduced himself, but we'll introduce him formally again. It's Micael Zollman from MedCan, based in South Africa. So welcome to the show, sir. And so you're in London at the minute, or in the UK at least, aren't you? So
yeah.
So do you kind of split your time between the two a bit, between here and South Africa?
We've got our operations, MedCan's operations are based in Johannesburg. I'm originally from Johannesburg, born and bred, but I haven't lived there for a while now. So I do try to split my time as much as I can, although I find myself spending more time in the UK rather than in South Africa. But I do spend quite a while in South Africa at the business, obviously.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit about MedCan and your journey so far, and a little bit about South Africa as well. I mean, we hear lots, around South Africa. I mean, it's obviously a great growing climate for cannabis. And I know the legal situation is sort of different to the UK. So tell us a little bit about yourself and MedCan.
Sure. So my name is Micael, as you said. I'm one of the founders of MedCan, and I'm the CEO. We started the business quite a while ago. It feels, I think it was about 6 or 7 years ago where we had the idea, let's say. So a few of us, we wanted to start a new business together, and we were exploring different opportunities within the country. And in about 2016 or 2017, they changed the law in South Africa to allow for the cultivation of medical cannabis. So that allows one to apply for a license at SAPA. You can apply for the license, and then if you are lucky enough to be awarded a license, then you can cultivate cannabis. So at the time, we got wind that this was coming. And when I say we, there's a few of us. So a couple of family members, my father's involved, my sister joined later on, and then a few very good family friends, let's say, property developers that we kind of approached and said, listen, we've got this crazy idea, having never done this before ever, but let's go. We want to build an indoor facility. We want to try get a license for cannabis. And they basically said to us, well, we've got the perfect property to do it. At which point we thought, okay, fine. So it was an old beer warehouse actually that used to belong to SA Breweries. It's a bit romantic that we took like an old beer warehouse and converted it into a fully indoor cannabis cultivation facility, but that's what we've still got. It's funny, we've still got some of the posters actually that SA Breweries left behind. So when you come to the facility, there's one poster of just beer. It's kind of funny, but cool. So that was the perfect warehouse. At that point, we brought on board another partner, Dumani, who's our responsible pharmacist, another founder of the business, and together we started to build MedCan, let's say. So we took this. We gutted this warehouse. We designed a new kind of facility from scratch. The three, I joke, but at the time, it was around 2016, 2017, we were very fortunate to be introduced to a lot of cannabis cultivators already. Obviously not in South Africa because it didn't exist, but a lot of one specifically in Israel who guided us or mentored us. We still owe him to this day, but the three letters that will forever haunt us are GMP. And so he mentioned to us at that stage, he's like, whatever you do, you have to build a facility that's up to GMP standards, GMP spec. And so at the time, sure, GMP, sure. Again, having never done any of this before, we had to go and do our homework. But thanks to that, when we were designing the facility, we had in the back of our minds that it had to be to GMP standards. And so we built the facility around 2020, we were licensed, and then COVID happened. So the massive lockdown, we couldn't really get the ball rolling, couldn't do what we wanted to do. And then we started cultivating towards the end of 2020 for the first time. And ever since then, we've just been full steam ahead. So we're relatively small. I don't like to, we kind of use the word craft. I don't know, we are sit on using the word craft cannabis but we are, let's say craft batching or craft small batches of medicinal cannabis. We really try to focus on the patient. So for us, the patient comes first, and rather than trying to produce a lot very quickly, we really wanted to get like a really good product out there from day one. And so we decided to start small and to expand rather than to start big and not have a really good product. And so, that's in a nutshell, that's us. We're a really small team. We're an amazing team. Most of the guys, most of the people at MedCan have never been in cannabis before, which is quite unique, I think. Our approach is quite an analytical one. Even our head of cultivation, he is a plant person. So he absolutely loves plants. So yes, he has an affinity towards cannabis, but he's not one of these like typical cannabis people that you, so really unique, really fun. And it's allowed us to kind of, over the last 2 years, create a really nice product. At least I think so. So
that's absolutely. So you're obviously sort of growing indoors in South Africa. How come not outdoors? You've got, like I say, you've got the great climate. You've got the kind of what we call like a Mediterranean climate, but opposite side of the world, so to speak. Is that part of the sort of timeline? Are you hoping to kind of get an outdoor facility or something like that, or?
Good question. Yeah. When we started, we approached some friends of ours that were property developers. So I think kind of what led us to going indoors, number one, was that we had an indoor facility, indoor property. And then when we started to kind of dig the surface a little bit, we realized that actually the market wanted indoor flower. So there was some, and again, whether that's the right view or the wrong view, but there was extra capacity, or there was already lots available from an outdoor point of view. And we thought it would be more unique. Our understanding was that indoor is a higher quality product, although it comes with much more challenges, let's say, as opposed to outdoor. But that was kind of the thinking. We had an indoor property available, or we had a property available that was fully indoors, and we wanted to grow an indoor product to kind of, our understanding at the time, naively or not, was indoor equals better quality. People can debate that. And so that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to run an indoor facility. And yes, I agree. The climate's very good. We've got amazing sunshine. So unfortunately, you give up that. We're hoping to use the sun to generate our electricity down the line. But you have to give up the power of the sun for an indoor facility, which is a pity. But that was kind of the motivation.
What are some of those challenges of growing indoor? As people who aren't growers, we'll sit here and we'll be the layman, we'll play devil's advocate. Why is it so much harder? Surely it's more controlled. Surely, why is it more challenging than just than leaving it free and letting nature take its course? Where do
I start? I think it's a difficult question to answer. There's a lot. I think that there's double the challenges in that. It's hard to separate the startup challenges from the cultivation challenges. So we're a startup, so we've got all those startup challenges, and then at the same time you've got this, like, I worked for a few years in tech, right? And so the way I compare it to, the way I explain it to people is, usually in tech, when you're building a tech product, you need to make a change. You kind of speak to the developers, you write sort of like the brief, and then like a few hours later the developer gets to it, pushes the change into the code, and you see the results. With an indoor facility, when you need to make a change, it's, first of all, you have to wait for the current crop to be done, because you can't make the change when the current crop's there. So 3 months, if you're lucky at the beginning that you see you need to make a change, 3 months later you can make the change, and then you have to wait and 3 months after that to see the results of those changes. I think the biggest challenge is having patience, let's say, and I'm not a patient guy, I'll admit it, it's one of my faults, but this business has taught me a lot of patience. But from the cultivation point of view, I think humidity is a big challenge for people. I think in general, it's something that is shared amongst the industry. So controlling your humidity in an indoor facility is very challenging, especially in a place. So our facility is up in the high veld, so that gets extremely humid in the summer. So it rains a lot in the summer rather than the winter. So although you are treating the air before it comes in, when you're sucking external air into your facility, you are bringing with it the humidity. So controlling that is very difficult, very expensive, and very energy intensive. And I think also another challenge is you don't really know what you need until you actually try to run the facility. So I said we were very naive in the beginning. We were. We built the facility with some help from some consultants, some people that were smarter at the time than us. And then you kind of, I think it's like anything, you start to run it, and then you're like, well, actually the way that it's built here is not the most optimal way to do it. And so we need to make those changes. And that's kind of been our journey and our lesson. And so, yeah, I think the physicality of it, that it's a physical thing that needs changing, is a massive challenge. I think humidity, pests, obviously, if you talk to any cultivator, the number one thing on their mind is pests, live pests, microbial pests, all of those things is like massive because you could basically lose your whole crop. It's very binary.
Yes, you're dealing with actual bugs rather than software bugs, kind of thing.
Yeah, right. And so, yeah, that's a massive thing because, also, again, I go back to like the startup thing is when you're a startup, every crop matters, right? So losing a crop so early on is kind of detrimental to your business. And kind of just those are the finding our way in the industry and trying to be transparent. I think a lot of people hide behind the fact that they're growing cannabis or that's a closed facility, but we've also tried to be as transparent as possible and try to like get people to appreciate the challenges that we as a cultivator have. And so like I'm not going to say the worst thing, but it's very different to growing a few plants in your bedroom, let's say, right, or in your attic or in the vacant property. And so I think once you go beyond a few plants, the challenges are exponential. And so it's just, we try to translate that so people can kind of understand. Again, that's why we didn't go so big so quickly. We wanted to go big enough that it was a commercial business, let's say, but not big enough that we had to compromise on cutting corners. Yeah.
Very cool. And in terms of your actual business model itself, are you simply sort of growing? Are you exporting only, or are you able to sell within South Africa itself? I know you're obviously active here in the UK as well as a supplier. How does it stack up at the minute?
Yeah, so we've got a product. The product's called Isando. There's a few potencies. Most recently, the one that just arrived in the US is Isando 20. So that's 20% THC. We are a cultivator. Our main focus is to cultivate, trim, package really high quality medicinal cannabis flower. We do that at the moment. We export it. Getting involved in the South African market for us has always been the goal. As a South African, we are a very proudly South African business. When our product arrives in the UK, it's labeled as made in South Africa. We love that, and we're very proud of that. At the moment, we aren't able to supply, at least we don't think we're unable to supply our product locally to patients because there's just no real mechanism available to patients to get our products at scale, let's say. Easily accessed. And when I say easy, I don't mean easy to go get cannabis. I just mean that there's a real mechanism or process in place for patients to be able to get it. It is our goal to supply the local market in South Africa. We want Isando to be available. We want patients to be able to get it. I said that our focus is on being a cultivator. Our focus is also making sure that patients are able to receive our product. So if a patient wants our product, if they think it will help them, then it's our goal to make sure that they can get it. So wherever possible, we'll try to get the product to them. Yeah.
It's our dealing with you in the past has obviously been via the CIC, so the Cannabis Industry Council, and we've learned more about what you're doing, and that's why we started talking and why you kind of sat with us today, because it's a really interesting story, and it's a part of the world that doesn't get probably enough coverage, certainly compared to other parts, and the parts that are hyped up, you know, your Germanys and, you know, Switzerland's and things like that. So it's really good to see. The thing that you'll often hear if you speak to Dave or myself, part of our pitch, quote unquote, when we talk to people is we create the content that we want to see. And it seems very much like you guys are creating a cannabis business that you would like to see, not in the way that it's structured, in the people that you work with, and how that feeds into sort of local community and being proud of where you're from and the fact that that's where your product's from and all your people are from and everything that goes into that. How much of the sort of ESG, for want of a better kind of blanket term, goes into the decision making you have in how the business is growing and evolving?
Yeah, great question. So you said, our dealings together has been through the Cannabis Council. So we did that story together a few weeks ago, right? So the story we wrote was about how we recycle our medium, but medium, for those listening, that it's like soil, but it's not living, is basically the way it's described to me. I thank our cultivator for teaching me all of these things. When it comes to cultivation, I leave it all to Adrian. So thank you, Adrian. I think ESG is a tough one for any business, and it has to come from the people within the business to drive those decisions and to drive those things forward. So again, very fortunate that for the team, it's been a massive focus. So we are conscious of the fact that, yes, we're an indoor cultivator, and yes, we're using a lot of electricity, and I don't know if you know, but in South Africa, most of the electricity, when we have it, is extremely dirty electricity. It's not renewable. I think something I read this morning that more than 85% of the electricity generated in South Africa is coal. So we're conscious of the fact that, you know, it's a very dirty way to produce electricity. So we wanted to give back as much as we could, let's say, or to offset those negative things. So one of the ways we do that is our medium. So we recycle. So we buy the medium. The medium's is a mixture of cocoa and perlite. It can't be reused, because if you imagine when you're cultivating, the plant goes in the medium and then the roots grow within the medium. So to put another plant there, you can't, basically. And so we kind of had to come up with a way to put this medium to better use. It was very difficult, I must be honest. One of our project manager, Dina, she spent a lot of time phoning around asking people, will you take this medium? And everyone was like, yeah, sure, we'll take it, but we're going to charge you for it, and we'll probably just take it and throw it into a dump, which defeated the whole purpose, right? So if it sits in a dump, it's basically sucked all this carbon, storing all this carbon. If it goes to a landfill, just carbon sitting there. And so we were connected to Scotch, who runs this community garden not very far from us. And so through conversations with him, we learned that he could use it within his community to use to plant and to mix with soil, and it makes amazing, I don't know if it's compost, I don't know, but it makes for a really good soil once you mix it with everything else. So he's using it, he collects it. In fact, he collects it after every crop. We donate it all to him. And so he uses all of that. And so it doesn't go to waste. The carbon basically gets kept either gets fed into the veggies or the fruits that he's growing, and otherwise just stays within the ground. We built I think the technical term is ginormous water tank outside our facility. So we catch all the rainwater. We try to recycle as much water as possible. We treat the water in our facility so that all the runoff from our tables goes back into the holding tank, and then we recycle that and treat it and reuse it. We have recently started looking at installing solar for our electricity. That's partly motivated by ESG and partly motivated by the fact that, you know, electricity in South Africa sometimes is hard to come by. So yeah, that's that, and we try to do as much as we can. We get our nutrients, these massive plastics. So we try to use those drums to store water. We give them to a few of the staff members that need them for, as much as we can do, we are doing. The stems of our plants are, when we finish bucking and trimming, we shred them, and then whoever needs them in the winter, we give them. It makes really good. Either you can spread it on your grass for compost, or you can actually burn it. It makes it's really good for to start a fire. Yeah.
Wow, it sounds like despite all the efforts you've gone to, it's not easy being green in that respect. It's
no, definitely not. It's expensive. It's costly, especially on the electricity front, which is why we haven't done it. We are still a startup, and we do have to be conscious of how we're spending our money. And so, but there are ways of doing it. There, for example, I do know that there are some business models that exist now that they'll fund the capital cost of solar, and then you pay them a tariff, let's say, for the electricity, and so over a few years you kind of pay back that. So that's an interesting model that we're starting to look at, let's say. But even so, it won't negate the fact that we need electricity from the grid, because we just consume so much. But yeah, being green is difficult. But whatever impact we can have, we really do try to have. Where possible, we also try to source things locally rather than overseas. As you can appreciate, it's taken a while for certain things to come to the local market in South Africa. Like in most places, cannabis is a relatively new industry. We're very lucky that South Africa is a very agricultural place, so it's not such a massive shift. But there are still things that are specific to cannabis that you have to be sourced, let's say, overseas. That hopefully one day soon we'll be able to source it locally.
Yeah. And what is the kind of status of cannabis locally in South Africa? I mean, obviously, I know it's decriminalized, but do you feel like your end game would be, medicinal and recreational? Do you feel like that's the kind of natural progression for the company, or is it something you're sort of going, well, we'll take it one day at a time and see? Or
yeah, good question. Again, our focus. I learned one thing in startups during my time, and it's thanks to a very good boss that I had previously. But you have to have hyper focus. So our hyper focus at MedCan at the moment is just creating a really good flower, and that's what I tell the guys and the girls every week. Sorry. I tell them our focus is on creating a really, really good flower, and we'll kind of go with the flow. For now, we're a medical cannabis business, right? We're playing in the medical cannabis space. We hold ourselves to, let's say, medical cannabis standards. So we want to meet those extremely strict standards every time, if not overachieve on them. What is the status in South Africa? I'm not an expert. Again, it's not our space, the recreational market, although we do kind of know a little bit about it. So from my understanding, yeah, you can grow plants in your garden. Let's say you can have your own personal supply, from what I understand. I believe that there were these cannabis clubs that were opening that were kind of taking advantage of there was a gray loophole. Again, not an expert. But yeah, so we try to stay away from the recreational stuff. We only want to really, for now, participate in the medical cannabis market. I think it's inevitable that the first step is medical, and the next step after that is recreational. The UK still has to do that. I think again, that's the model in these other countries, right? So I'm just.
It's really interesting. I mean, the whole thing about here in the UK not being able to we can grow it, but we have to export it. And if we want to use it, you have to import it. I mean, it is crazy. And then looking at what they're proposing in Germany, I don't know if you saw some of the things they've been sort of in the news recently around, one of the stipulations is, it has to be kind of grown in Germany. And it's like, okay, well, again, it would probably be, indoor, because I guess Germany, similar climate here in the UK. It's Northern Europe. It's not sort of, it's going to be a certain way. But thinking around, it just kind of makes sense if you've got a sort of climate or society, or you've got a kind of culture where, cannabis is used regularly, recreationally, medically, whatever, and you have the ability to kind of grow it on the sort of the climate and things like that. That it just seems to sort of feed into itself, doesn't it? You think it just kind of makes sense that those sort of things would happen. And it's, I think it's just kind of interesting when I think there's so many kind of great areas around policy and things like that. And it's like, well, what can you get away with? And it always feels like there's a need to kind of push up against those sort of things when it comes to, especially when it comes to sort of recreational cannabis. It's like, what's permissible, what isn't. Like they have in the Netherlands, where they have the kind of coffee shop where it's okay to go buy it, but where's the gray area is, the demand outstrips supply. So you have to turn to the kind of illegal market or recreate, what do you even call it, to actually access the product you need to be able to sell. And it's I wasn't sure if something like that is kind of visible in South Africa. Does it kind of operate in a similar way? You kind of have dispensaries, or is it just not that kind of visible? It's just very much personal use, and you can grow it, you have your own thing, and you go do that, from a recreational perspective.
Yeah, recreational, yes. It's funny you asked that question. We were having a discussion. We had a meeting this morning actually, and I asked the question, and the guy said, well, there's no rules that say you can do this, but there's also no rules that say you cannot do this. We were talking about something specific. And so he said, our view is, okay, well, let's try to do it. And then when the regulator gets involved, you kind of say, well, okay, now we need regulation for this, or we need your help with guidelines on this, right? So there's a lot that's still undefined, especially in South Africa. So I think I mentioned earlier, there is a mechanism that people are trying to use to allow for doctors to prescribe cannabis. So it's a special application that one makes, that it's like similar in the UK, but not really, to unlicensed medicines. It's almost like a medicine of last resort in South Africa, that there's no other medicine that exists. And the doctor is saying, okay, fine, well, you can try this medicine that's not kind of regulated. But again, it's from our understanding, whether it's allowed, not allowed, I think it's a bit of, I don't know, I don't want to say a loophole, but it's just something that people have again, and I'm not taking advantage of. It's just a mechanism that people are using.
It's undefined, and until it's outright. If it's not outright illegal, then it's not. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
For us as a business, we'd like some better definition. Let's say before we jump in and say, okay, here's Isando. It's now available in South Africa for doctors to be writing scripts for. But I think the time will come. It's only a matter of time. But things take another really good lesson. Jamie, you asked earlier about challenges. Things in this industry take a lot longer than one anticipates. So, and I don't think it's necessarily for cannabis. I think startups in cannabis, just pharmaceutical regulation, all this kind of stuff. Things take so long, and so the joke at MedCan is that over the last few years, we've been really good at budgeting our finances, but we've been really bad at budgeting our time. So we often, every time we estimate how long things are going to take, we often multiply by 2 or 3 just to be safe. And even then we're not, we still under budgeted time. So things in this space take long. And so like all other places, I think in South Africa, it's just a matter of time. We hope. But in the meantime, we're actively participating in the UK. So you mentioned the Cannabis Council. So we were part of the, let's say, founding cohort. We were one of the first businesses to join the council. We tried to be quite active on it. And we try to keep abreast of everything that's happening in the UK. Always love talking to patients. I was speaking to a few patients this week, just getting some feedback on our products. We love feedback. We love hearing from people. So contact details if you're listening and you want to get in touch, it's all on our website. But yeah, we do love hearing feedback. We do take things on board. We're a relatively small team, quite nimble, and so we like hearing what people have to say and suggestions, because at the end of the day, we are very patient focused. Like I said, we want to produce a really good flower, but the flower is for the patients. So it's very important to us that the patients are happy and that it's working for them. Those are the best stories.
I was going to say, what kind of feedback are you getting in terms of, and what kind of makes you smile when you go, actually, it makes it all worthwhile what we're doing. We get a real sense of this is actually really helping people. I mean, you must have days like that where you go, do you know what, it's great, Yeah,
it helps get over the bad days, right? When you're dealing with massive challenges at your facility. But no, we've had some really good stories from people. We don't hear them often directly because a lot of patients don't want to reach out directly. And so the stories are via. I'm just, a lot of stories like that people having never slept before because they've got terrible back pain and then prescribed our product and then having the best sleep they've had in how long in like, they can't remember how long they haven't had a sleep like that. Those kinds of things are like why we do it. It's really important to us. The impact that it has on people, helping people, treating their conditions. And then at the same time, feedback on the product. When we started the first few batches that we sent to the UK on all we had some people following the social media stuff, the Reddit stuff. And so one piece of feedback that people were saying were like, the flour was great, but the trim could be a bit better. I don't know if they thought that we were looking or not, but as a result, we changed our trimming methods, right? So we got a trained team in to trim the flour. So this flour, instead of being trimmed in a machine, is now trimmed by hand, and it's much better, admittedly, right? So we were naive, and it's one of the reasons you can't go big from day one, because those kinds of things you can't do if you're too big. So that kind of feedback, not only that it's helping people, but also on the product, has really helped us as a business, improve our products and really make sure that it helps people. So yeah.
That's great to hear. It's actual agility, not the buzzword. We really do respond and get on with things and change them. And I suppose it's interesting having that batch cycle, as much of a curse as it is in some ways. It takes 3 months every time and then 6 months really to know. It does mean that in those windows, when your next batch is going to start, when you can start doing things to make changes and to make improvements based on feedback. So
yeah,
that's
exactly.
helpful. I think it's good to hear it. Quite a pragmatic approach, it's that hyper focus. We'll just make good flour and not worry about the mechanisms of delivery or who can or who can't have it. If we make good flour and there are legal markets, then it can make its way to them and it can help people. And let's not get too bogged down in the other stuff, because we got, pretty time starved as it is, because it's a startup and it's cannabis and it's all a challenge.
Yeah, you have to take the challenges on the chin as well. But there's been a few occasions along the journey where, some of the team have said other people that maybe didn't have such thick skin would have given up. But you just have to get through it. You just have to, like you said, every batch, you're never going to get it right from the first batch. It takes iteration and it takes practice and refinement and improvement and all these kinds of things. So yeah, every batch, I don't think we've had a batch so far where we haven't made these, small improvements, small adjustments, upgrades to the facility, that it just, things get better and better. So yeah. Yeah,
absolutely. No, it's been great to speak with you, Micael. Just as a final kind of question, what's kind of next for MedCan? What are you guys? What's your plan for sort of 2023 and beyond? Where do you hope to be this time next year?
That's a good question. I haven't actually thought about it. So we would like to expand. So like I said, we started off relatively small. We have some expansion plans, which we've started to look at, the ability to, without compromising on the quality of our flour, to grow more and supply more. We are looking to transition to quite a unique new strain. So a product, the strain's less important than the cannabinoid profile and the terpenes, but we would like to transition to something that's quite unique to us, something that's got a unique terpene profile, really good cannabinoid profile, something that the patients can appreciate and really like. And so the plan for 2023, a bit of expansion, this kind of transition to a flour that performs well indoors and that patients can really enjoy and that it works for people. And we'll see from there. In this business, there's a lot of different opportunities. Things like oils is also something that's on our radar. But again, like I said, hyper focus on creating a good flour. If oil comes as a result of that, then that's also cool. I think expansion, maybe move towards a unique strain or unique, let's say, profile of a flour at our facility. Hopefully improvements on the ESG, hopefully something towards some step in the right direction on solar power at the facility. Growing the team. We love to grow the team. We recently had a new hire for the first time in, let's say, 2 years, which is how that the business is kind of okay, we're at a good point now because we're able to hire someone new. That was a good thing. We'd like to expand the team, obviously. The guys and the girls have been working extremely hard over the last years. Like any other startup, it's been blood, sweat, and tears. Literally. I think literally. Yeah, let's say literally in some cases. Things will run smoother, expansion, some unique products to the market. That's pretty much the plan.
Very cool. And it sounds like, again, that kind of software thing of, continuous learning, continuous improvement. It seems like it's, you can't, like, I think as you sort of discussed, you can't sort of treat cannabis in the same way you can software. It's a living product. But again, some of those quality checks and that evolving process is, you can't go wrong, can you? It's fail and learn from your mistakes and make better mistakes next time. So no, good luck with it all. We made it very clear as a team that no one must be scared to make mistakes. If you make a mistake, you admit it and we move on. But the point is that you learn from it. So don't try to hide from it. And let's make the mistake, learn from the mistake. And nothing's going to be perfect from the beginning. We know that we have to do things one way in order to get to a point where we can do it another way. But in the beginning, you have to go through the slog and do things really difficultly and not perfect. But as long as you know that this is a step towards doing things let's say the more correct way. I'm not going to say the right way. I'm going to say the more correct way. Very good. Yeah. Very cool. Well, thank you very much again, Micael, and best of luck, and we'll speak with you again soon. So thank you very much, and we'll see you again.
Thanks for having me.